Time ran by fast. The normally quiet as a picture Chambord city had gradually become lively. In less than 4 days, the young King Alexander would be 18 years old and could accept the Zenit Empire's emperor's conferment and officially occupy the throne and become the 8th king of Chambord city. In the past 2 weeks, Chambord city had gone through too many things, and in that process, Alexander incredibly rose from a ridiculed idiot to a true king inside the hearts of the Chambord citizens. Because of this, the whole country had been looking forward to this day. As time approached, everyone was happily preparing for the king's ascension. Anything would have to give way for the ceremony. And even the 2 military giants officials Bast and Brooke, who were incredibly busy coping with the upcoming military and political reform, also put down their heavy workload and began fully focusing on the preparations for King Alexander's ascension to the throne. In accordance with Chambord city's tradition, the location of the ceremony was chosen to be on the summit of the eastern mountain inside the city. For days later, when the first ray of golden sun shined from the sea of clouds, would be the moment that Alexander ascends the throne. Although Faye repeatedly urged for the ceremony to be simple, there was still a large number of materials used for the celebration, and they were carried by a continuous flow of workers up the mountain. Everyone put in an effort, wanting to prepare this as the grand event of Chambord city. Alexander's past performance has completely won the hearts of all residents, and most people were more than willing to accept the rule from such a kind-hearted king from the bottom of their hearts. All men and women, young and old, all fought to be the first ones to contribute. The wealthy ones contributed money, the muscular ones contributed with labor, the merchants contributed items, and the general population contributed many people to all join the preparation army for this celebration. What surprised many people was that Chambord city's holy church's priest Zola and Luciano Knight also joined the service army, and the monks and knights all showed unprecedented enthusiasm, providing a lot of financial support. Zola and Luciano also personally boarded the summit of the eastern mountain, doing their morning prayers every morning with an extremely devout attitude, as if the one ascending the throne in 4 days was not Alexander, but rather Pope Sergielli. At the same time, there were also guests from afar that came to the Chambord city. After hearing news of Alexander entering adulthood and ascending the throne, many small countries around Chambord city that were affiliated with the Zenit Empire also sent messengers to congratulate him. Of course, Zenit Empire had 250 affiliated countries, so the ones that came to congratulate him was just a very small portion. After all, Chambord city was only a Tier 6 subsidiary city, and it was still a question of whether it could maintain its Tier 6 subsidiary city status in the upcoming Empire war practice drills. The weak needed no diplomacy, and it was the same law in Azeroth continent. Morning, birds singing among the flowers scent. King's discussion hall. In the little pond in the middle of the hall, clean water was running, and red fish playfully wagged their tails. On the stone chairs on 2 sides of the pond sat the leaders of Chambord city, who were currently having a meeting for King Alexander's upcoming ascension ceremony. This was an extended meeting. In addition to the military officials and nobility, there were also highly respected people that were invited to attend the meeting. On the first stone chair on the left-hand side below the throne, the Herald Bast was summarizing the information he had complied. Sarith City's Prince Eabiner, Lake City's Prince Modric, Xianxia City's Prince. Old handsome Bast said about 20 countries' name in one breath, looked up, and slowly looked at everyone in the stone chairs as he continued. This is the messenger list of all the countries that came to congratulate King Alexander's official acceptation of canonization. Tier 3 subsidiary cities. Sarith City also sent someone? Brooke, who sat on the right-hand side's first chair, listened and slightly frowned. As if he thought of something, he said in surprise, "Weren't they good buddies with the Blockstone City?" Even one of the so-called 5 eagles of the 250 subsidiary city princes, Prince Eabina, was sent here. 5 eagles. Faye very sensitively caught this term. Yes, Your Majesty. In the 250 subsidiary cities in Zenit Empire, various young elites emerged among the various royal families' princes. They are all incredibly talented and have also been vigorously cultivated by the royal families, and the people that had nothing better to do grouped their names together and called them the 10 elites, 9 warriors, 8 pro, 7 wolves, 6 heroes, 5 eagles, 4 blades, 3 mad, 2 hidden, One sword. Sarith City's little Prince Eabina is one of the 5 eagles wing eagle, and is rumored to have reached the 4-star level of strength. Besides, this Sarith City is a Tier 3 subsidiary city, but they have always been really close with our sworn enemy Black Rock City, so they can be considered as one of our potential enemies. I didn't think that they would actually send someone to see your Majesty's ceremony, and of all the people they sent the wing eagle Eabina, I suspect that they aren't up to any good and have ill intent. Brooke heard Faye's question and immediately stood up and briefly explained the origin of the 5 eagles, as well as Chambord's and Saritha's relationship. Faye nodded and understood the general idea. A small Tier 3 subsidiary city that actually had a prince of the 4-star strength surprised Faye a little. Besides the 5 eagles, there were also the 10 elites, 9 warriors, 8 pro, 7 wolves, 6 heroes, 4 blades, 3 mad, 2 hidden, 1 sword. These people were obviously not some insignificant characters, especially the 10 people in front of the 4-star level, 5 eagles. Their power was obviously terrifying. This discovery made Faye suddenly feel a sense of urgency and made him feel like a little frog sitting at the bottom of a well. He originally thought that Chambord City had been developing pretty well recently, but now that he looked closely, it wasn't close to being enough. It still wasn't enough to just rely on the Hulk potion. But in addition, Tier 4 Lake City has always been very close to Chambord. Lake City's King Blanco and Your Majesty's father had a very close relationship, calling each other brothers. This time, the little Prince Modric that came to congratulate is only 16 years old, but is already recognized to be one of the 10 elites, with a pinnacle 2-star strength and an immeasurable future. I think Your Majesty should personally meet Prince Modric, Bast suggested. Okay. On the matter of the reception of the embassy, you will arrange everything and let me know the result. Faye's head was getting a little big from this kind of conference. Countless little things piled up and became cumbersome. He thought for a second, and directly left the mess to his future father-in-law Bast, Brooke and the others, and then he shamelessly patted his butt and directly fled from the hall. In the hall, everyone looked at each other in an awkward silence. There were so many people in this world who wanted to ascend to the throne this high, and after they got the throne, many of them would hold on to their power tightly in fear of sharing a tiny bit with others. However, Alexander was the exact opposite, and hid away from the power like it was a disease. This king was really unique, but who would help the ministers inside the hall get out of the awkward atmosphere? Let's continue our discussion. Bast shook his head with a wry smile. I will report the final details to His Majesty and make a decision later. Chambord City's back mountain, original steel prison water dungeon square. This place had long been classified as forbidden and completely blocked. Of course, there seemed to be nothing wrong from the outer appearance. The guards were just like before. There were only 4 or 5 extremely and relaxed soldiers lazily scattered at the entrance of the stone castle. But in the dark, the 22 warriors were following a strange pattern around all sides of the mountain paths patrolling, and not even a mosquito could get in undetected. As the king, Faye smoothly entered the forbidden ground with no resistance and went straight down into the underground stone cave maze. The originally dark underground stone cave had significantly changed. In comparison to the quiet outside, the inside was much more active, with rattling sounds of stone and metal clanging all over the place. Prison official Oleg and King's bodyguard army leader were currently commanding hundreds of carefully selected fine soldiers, according to the blueprints on beast skins provided by Faye, to completely re-repair this water prison. The 100 workers that worked here were all elites chosen by Brooke in accordance to Faye's order. They had a clean background, were loyal and reliable, and after being refined by the diluted Hulk potion, their strength significantly improved. Although none of them had yet to level up to star-level warriors, each of their physical bodies had reached over thousands of pounds. They were tyrannically strong, clearly comparable to the 22 warriors from the previous Stone Bridge battle. They were also trained by a master like Peterchek, so they had begun to take form as the prototype of an iron army. The originally eerie and terrifying water prison had changed its look bit by bit. The blood-stained iron fences and torture instruments had been removed. In the skyscraper interior-like huge stone hall that was deep into the corridor, a dozen iron furnaces had been set up. The best blacksmiths in Chambord City brought their best apprentices, and along with the help of the soldiers, they continuously sent the iron fences into the furnace to be melted. Following the drawings provided by Fei, they created new strange-looking things. These things weren't swords or armor. Most were just strange instruments and gadgets that most people didn't know about. In the deep corridor, the captain of the king's bodyguard army Peter Czech exposed his strong upper body. His muscles stood out like rocks, and his lower body was wearing Fei's design, which were straight breeches that had recently swept the entire Chambord City as a fashion leader. He waved a giant iron hammer of at least 500 kilograms like a windmill. In the roar of the loud noises, the dirty yellow color of his muscles were flashing, and Czech was like a violent humanoid excavator, smashing down steel fences within the endless rumbling noises and caused by the demolition work. At this time, Czech had completely digested the remnants of the Hulk potion left inside his body, and the faint green color on the surface of his skin had disappeared. He had also erased the miserable mental state from before and got his muscles to sturdy up. In addition to his physical strength, through the days and nights of hard training, he even returned to his past pinnacle 2-star power. To be able to recover to the peak of his power within only a dozen days, it still mainly had to do with the strength he originally had. In the past, Czech was recognized to be number 1 among 2 stars in terms of defense with his airtight horizontal lockdown sword style. Besides, he originally had some talent in terms of leading an army, so Czech's recovery meant that Fei gained another talent that could lead an army on his own besides Brooke. The prison official Oleg's chubby body shuttled back and forth among the crowd. As if affected by Czech's naked body style, the prison official also exposed his upper body, and whenever there were huge stones or steel that couldn't be moved due to being too heavy, Oleg would jiggle his fat and laugh, and then personally join in to help, showing off the great power he gained after being transformed with the Hulk potion. Just like Fei, this guy was also a show-off. Whenever hearing the soldiers exclaiming and talking, Oleg would always look triumphant. Perhaps it was also because of this kind of heart that although his power stayed at around 1 star, his physical strength had actually crazily grown to 2 stars, as if he spent all the effects of the Hulk potion onto his physical body's transformation. Right now, Oleg even had a ferocious and sturdy scent and developed a 6-pack, completely changing from his obnoxiously fat man image from half-month ago. Seeing from afar how this greedy and coward-like fatty actually became close with the soldiers and even got some respect from the veterans, Fei was slightly surprised, but also satisfied that Fat Oleg was on his journey to return to grace. But wasn't he running a bit too fucking fast? It was like a fart that blew all the dust away. King Alexander, His Majesty. Seeing Fei's arrival, the face of worshipping a god emerged on all the soldiers' faces, and they all bowed and saluted. Fei walked very slowly and greeted them all with a smile. After a few days of contact, he could now accurately call out the names of every soldier. That was also a small means of capturing the hearts of the soldiers. After all, when the young soldiers heard that His Majesty actually knew their names, they would always feel touched to the point that their blood boiled. The demolition work at the water prison was still being carried out in an intense but orderly manner. This time, Fei brought back some second-stage forging blueprints and gave them to the busy blacksmiths. Among the 30 or so blacksmiths in Chambord City, the best one and also the most respected one was a middle-aged man named Samuel. His short black hair shot up like needles and he was usually pretty quiet and as stable as a boulder, so people liked calling him Rock. His personality was pretty dull, but he was very loyal to friends and very kind. He was the type of typical rough man that had a cold outside but a warm heart. On the edge of the hot iron stove, Samuel carefully looked at the drawings on the beast skins that His Majesty gave to him, and his eyebrows frowned tightly into a ball. He stopped the work in his hand and began thinking. He was sometimes surprised and sometimes confused, and the two facial expressions just kept alternating. Seeing how interesting his face was, Fei couldn't help but jump in and explain those drawings one by one, and then also carefully reminded the detailed problems that needed attention during the forging process. Samuel stayed silent. His talent was very high as a blacksmith, and he was often capable of reaching enlightenment with just a brief pointer. After hearing Fei to the end, his eyebrows finally relaxed, and it seemed like he finally realized what should be done and kept on nodding. "Your Majesty, please rest assured. We can build these iron tools within 10 days for sure." Faye smiled and said, "These days you guys have been really working hard. Time is tight and the task is heavy. So if you guys have any requests for pay or accommodation, feel free to request it to Oleg and he will satisfy everyone." Upon hearing His Majesty's generous promise, the blacksmiths cheered. Faye carefully examined the whole underground cave, made slight adjustments to his design according to the actual situation, and then summoned Chek and Oleg to his side and walked towards the king's palace hall that was already set up in the giant stone hall. He has something to say to both of them. But when Faye walked past the iron stove, he suddenly had another idea. In fact, Samuel and the other blacksmiths in Chambord City were forging some large-scale heavy equipment. They were a bit simple and easier to forge, but for those small gears, screws, and other small fine and difficult parts, Faye gave them to the female blacksmith Charcy in the Diablo world so that they wouldn't be a problem. When the time came, he would just have to think of a way to exchange these items out of the Diablo world. However, exchanging items out of the Diablo world was too costly and needed a lot of gold coins. If he could do something for Charcy and Elena to come to the real world, then it would all be good. That would not only save a significant amount of exchange fee, but Faye could also let Rock Samuel follow Charcy and learn some superb forging skills. For the current Chambord City, skilled craftsmen were needed most after skilled warriors, so it would be best to let the big-chested girl Charcy train a group of talents in this field as soon as possible. This idea flew past Faye's mind and made him instantly think of a lot of other things, so he decided to actually try out this plan in the near future. The three men came to a comfortable stone chamber inside the cave that was the temporary palace for His Majesty. Faye took out another bottle of Hulk potion and gave it Chek, letting him follow the previous method to once again dilute it into clear water and let the soldiers unconsciously drink it. These 100 soldiers were now the secret force of the Chambord City. After taking the potion during the first stage, their bodies had been transformed almost to the point where they were ready for the second transformation. Unfortunately, due to people like Chek and Brooke taking a large quantity for their first dose, their potential had been completely revealed, so taking the Hulk potion again wouldn't have any more effects. If Faye wanted to enhance their strength further, he needed to think of other ways. Chek held the Hulk potion and was about to leave when Faye suddenly thought of something. He suddenly stopped Chek and said, "Oh right, Peter, among those several blacksmiths, if there are any loyal and reliable people, you can also let them take some of the diluted Hulk potion. If their physical body strength gets increased to the same level of the soldiers, the forging tasks later on will also be completed quicker." With a pleasant surprise in Chek's eyes, he bowed and left with the order. There were only Faye and Oleg left in the hall. Faye looked up and down on Oleg several times, and his eyes stopped at the six-pack of this fat man for a second. He checked him out until Oleg couldn't stand straight anymore due to how uncomfortable it was to be checked out by another man. And then Faye finally nodded with satisfaction and said, "Very good, you are good, very good. Oleg, you are a wise man. You know what I'm talking about, right?" Oleg nodded. Of course he understood what the phrase "very good" His Majesty was referring to. Presently, the power structure within Chambord City has been re-established. The former Commander-in-Chief Bazel became a wanted fugitive offender of the country, and his accomplices had all been killed either under the hands of His Majesty himself or by the two giants Bast and Brooke. If one was to say that one person escaped, it would be Oleg. His body was also deeply marked with a Bazel clan mark, and as one of the main evildoers, he originally couldn't escape punishment. But just because His Majesty remembered Oleg's participation at the Stone Bridge War, the king used his personal prestige and saved his worthless life once. His Majesty always hoped that Oleg could be reformed and use actions to change how people used to look at him and seek their forgiveness and ultimately merge into the leading group at Chambord City. Otherwise, despite having His Majesty's support, Oleg's existence would always be a thorn, deeply rooted inside the core power of Chambord City and potentially cause internal strife. Oleg had long understood of King Alexander's hard planning. He was smart fatty, and at least he had his own way to manage relationships with people and naturally knew how to win the recognition of Brooke and the other good people. So during this period of time, he tried very hard to do everything right, and he did indeed do a lot of good deeds which finally had an effect, helping him gain the recognition of most people in the Chambord City. Oleg thanks your majesty for the reform opportunity. Thinking of all of that, Oleg's heart was full of affection. This time, this fat suck-up kneeled down to the ground for a standard bow, without gorgeous rhetoric and kissing Faye's boots. It was also at this moment that he found his inner peace and finally understood at that moment. Only if a spine was always upright and solemnly bent down in front of his majesty could it be regarded as true respect. On the contrary, a spine that could bend down any moment wouldn't mean much in front of his king. It wouldn't be glory, but rather an insult. Faye watched Oleg's performance and knew that this fatty really understood his thoughts this time, and he nodded pleasantly. He didn't say anything anymore. With a sudden thought, Faye placed a red sorcerer's stone on the table in front of him and asked, "Come take a look. Do you recognize this thing?" "This is a low-grade fire elemental sorcerer's stone." Oleg showed a little trace of surprise and honestly replied, "Well, since you recognize it, then let's talk about it." "About the sorcerer's stone? How much do you know?" Oleg didn't know why His Majesty suddenly started asking about the sorcerer's stone, but he didn't dare to neglect it all, and after a little thought he started replying, "The sorcerer's stone is a magical stone rich with elemental strength, and according to the quality it can be categorized into low-grade, medium-grade, high-grade, perfect, and legendary grade. In the land of Azeroth, a sorcerer's stone was a symbol of wealth above gold and silver coins, especially to the many sorcerers and warriors. A sorcerer's stone's worth was above coins, because sorcerers could use its elemental power to enhance their magic stats, build magic arrays, make magic scrolls and equipment, and warriors could extract the elemental powers to enhance their energy storage capacity and the speed at which their energy was condensed into star levels. "Oh." Faye was surprised for a second and then said, "Then according to what you said, warriors can also use their magic stones to increase their energy level." "Yes, Your Majesty." "Well, okay. Tell me more about the different grades of sorcerer's stones. Can they achieve a certain percentage of conversion rate among them?" "Of course, Your Majesty, the sorcerer's stone's quality is mainly dependent on the level of energy it contains. Generally speaking, a medium-grade sorcerer's stone's elemental energy storage is 100 times low-grade ones, and the high-grade is 100 times the storage of the medium-grade, and perfect grade has 100 times more storage than the high-grade storage. Of course, that's just a general standard." Oleg was very slow with the explanation, trying his best to make his answer seem detailed. The conversion ratio between different ranks of the magic stone originally follows the ratio of 1 to 102, however, most of the time, because the quantity of higher quality magic stones is relatively less, things usually can't be measured by the amount of energy contained, and higher grade stones can be traded for a little over 100 lower grade ones. In the case of some special events such as an outbreak of war, high-grade sorcerer's stones can be used to make large magic scrolls, and with increased demand during war, sorcerer's stones of different grades conversion rate can go up to 1:150 or even 1:200. Faye suddenly felt incredibly happy. His previous guess was verified, and that meant his plan could also be successfully implemented. Clearly, the so-called low, medium, high, perfect, legendary grade 5 types of sorcerer's stones respectively corresponded to the Diablo world's chip gem, flaw gem, regular gem, flawless gem, perfect gem, 5 types of gems. But in the Diablo world, every tier of gem could be upgraded at the conversion ratio of 3 to 1. Then, Faye just needed to find Horadric Cube at Lutgolian Halls of Dead, and then he would be able to freely upgrade high-grade perfect gems, and then take advantage of the giant difference in conversion rate between the real world and the Diablo world to acquire huge profits. In our Shamboard city, are there any channels for exchanging sorcerer's stones? Faye tries to suppress the excitement in his heart and continued asking. Your Majesty, the exchange of sorcerer's stones can indeed be performed in some large business market groups, but Shamboard City is relatively remote, so very few large trading groups would come visit us here. If we want to exchange sorcerer's stones, we must send out a trade team outside to initiate contact. So, now there's no channel readily available for sorcerer's stone trading? Faye was a little disappointed. Let me think. Yes, there is a way you can do it at the Holy Church, but it is generally open to the people outside of the Holy Church. Oleg thought for a while and said, Church? Faye's eyes suddenly brightened up. An idea suddenly came to his mind. All right, you are dismissed. Oh right, the transformation process of the underwater prison should be appropriately accelerated. But we can't let the soldiers and blacksmiths feel too tired. Remember, on the food and pay side of things for our people, we must not dissatisfy them. As for what to do in detail, I think you know very well already. If you get me trouble, watch how I beat your ass. Faye smiled and said. Oleg was also a smart man, and he knew that His Majesty smiling and swearing at the same time meant that His Majesty was quite satisfied with his performance these days. So he nodded, respectfully bowed, and turned around and exited the hall. Faye sat quietly and thought that since there was nothing that he needed to take care of here, and since it was also about time, he simply ordered the guards to hold the stone hall's entrance to prohibit anyone from entering, and then directly opened the portal and entered the Diablo world. Diablo world. Deep inside the dry hills, outside of Lutgolian. Halls of Dead's third underground floor. Faye brought beauty mercenary Elena and finally came here again. Halls of Dead was an underground tomb, and its layout was somewhat similar to the underground at the back mountain of Chambord City. It was also a buried underground stone maze, but it was much more gorgeous and magnificent than the one in Chambord City. Here there was a long corridor, and the walls of the corridor were engraved with some fuzzy murals, telling of the prosperous ancient times. In addition to the murals, there were giant pillars everywhere. On the secret chamber's door were some carved strange magic characters, and the power of the elemental magic was somewhat hidden and present. With just a little touch, the door would sink into the ground with a loud noise, revealing the internal space of the chamber behind the stone door. Faye had a health potion bottle in his mouth and used himself as a meat shield to block off the chamber's entrance, preventing the massive monsters inside from coming out as he waved the giant axes in his hand. The frost bolts were also fired from Elena's hands through Faye's hair and accurately landed on the monsters in front of them. The two had already cooperated with each other in this kind of environment many times and had long been familiar with this place. A glance and an action was all they needed to produce numerous sparks, and that was the so-called best partners. Under such cooperation, the chief boss, Blood which the Wild, finally couldn't hold anymore, wailed and sprayed out blood, and then fell into the pool of blood on the ground filled with resentment. And as she fell, a light ding-dong ring was heard. The light gold color shined, and a dark gold box with a mysterious pattern engraved appeared on the ground, flashing a dizzy and mysterious gray light. It's the Horadric Cube. Faye was overjoyed, as he ignored the gold equipment and 3 blue equipment that were also dropped. He went up and picked up the Horadric Cube, as if he picked up a peerless treasure, carefully checked it back and forth, and then he finally calmed down. Judging from the outside, Horadric Cube was a box forged with dark steel, 20 centimeters in both length and width, and the body of the box was covered up with dark yellow color metal bands, forming ancient and simple patterns, like a vine wrapped around the box. It looked very heavy, at least about 3 to 4 pounds, but in Faye's hand it felt as light as a feather. Faye quickly opened the Horadric Cube, and inside the box was another dimension, with 12 spaces with 3 in width and 4 in height, just like the computer game from the past. He couldn't wait and got the long-prepared 3 chip gems from his bag, closed the box, then pressed the palm of his hand on the S-shaped pattern at the top of the box and injected a little magic power into it. An indescribable sound of nature came to their ears. When they reopened the box, the magical upgrading effect of the Horadric Cube really worked. Faye just saw that the 3 chip gems that were originally placed inside the box had turned into a flawed gem, and from the appearance point of view it was much better than the chip gems, and the elemental energy contained inside also achieved a vigorous growth of 100 times. The legendary artifact, Horadric Cube, really worked. Faye felt greatly assured. This marked that his money-making plan had completed more than a big half. Now that they got the Horadric Cube, Faye is no longer in a hurry to complete the next missions on the list. He already adjusted the future leveling strategy, so he took Elena directly back to the rogue encampment, then shut himself in his temporary tent and began the gem synthesis plan. During the process, Faye quietly opened the portal numerous times, coming back and forth out of the Diablo world and the real world over 30 or 40 times, using the barbarian's inventory space, and took more than half of the sorcerer stones that Zola contributed before into the Diablo world. and chose a portion of it to start the synthesis process. After about half an hour later, Faye finished synthesizing 10 flawed gems, 10 regular gems, 10 flawless gems, and 2 perfect gems, and then he sold the rest of the chipped gems at Akra's place, receiving a total 50,000 gold coins in total, and together with the 30,000 gold coins he accumulated previously, now on Faye's barbarian character there was actually a large sum of 80,000 gold coins. Muahahaha. I'm rich, I'm rich. With the money, he could purchase a set of super armor and powerful weapon equipment from senior NPCs at LitRPG, and that way the strength of the barbarian character would absolutely instantly grow 1 or 2 times. In the thought of excitement, without the slightest hesitation, Faye directly walked out of the tent and found the blue cloth Wariv at the encampment, and was about to go east towards LitRPG. Just at that moment, a timid voice suddenly came to his ear. Sir Faye, please wait. Sir, we also want to go visit LitRPG. Can you take us with you? Yes, sir. Please bring us. We promise that we won't bring you trouble. We will only tour around the streets and see the style of the big city. More than a dozen young and beautiful female rogues flashed their big eyes and surrounded Faye, frequently flirting with Faye with their eyes. Last time these girls were surprised to find that Wariv could actually take someone and teleport them to the Desert Pearl, LitRPG thousands of miles away, avoiding the 2 months of travel, and they were all extremely excited and all wanted to go tour around in the big city. But it turned out that Wariv's teleport ability was actually useless to them, so they had no choice but to go ask Faye to take them. Faye was completely trapped by these beautiful women's flirtatious eyes. No problem, I will take you guys, ha ha ha. So, Faye agreed to the requests of these rogues, and after talking to Wariv, he picked Go East. After a white light, Faye disappeared in front of the rogues' eyes, but these female rogues all looked at one another and were stunned at the same spot. LitRPG. Ha ha ha, we are here. You guys can walk around in the city, but remember, do not go to the sewer or leave the city. All the monsters are very powerful, and you guys will be no match for them. Where are the people? Faye was just talking, but when he turned around to look, there's actually no one standing behind him. What happened? Did those female rogues suddenly change their mind and not come anymore? A burst of autumn wind blew up the autumn leaves, sending it flying in the wind. Not even one followed? Are they kidding me? Sai, you can never guess what girls are thinking. It doesn't matter how many guesses you take, since you'll never get it right. Noticing that these young and beautiful rogues didn't follow him here, Faye looked sadly at the flying yellow sand and autumn leaves for a while. He thought that the girls suddenly changed their mind and decided not to travel. So he had no choice but to hum a little song as he walked across the big and small streets inside LitRPG and found the NPC Farah inside the city. She played the same role in LitRPG as the big-chested beauty Charsi at Rogue Encampment, a blacksmith. From her, Faye could buy higher level and more lethal weapons. Faye opened the trade dialogue box and began to sweep the goods. He started with armor. The Arctic Fur's monster drop from before only had 48 defense and was now a little out of date. It was difficult to resist the sharp teeth and claws of higher-level monsters and demons, so it was time to upgrade. He carefully looked through everything and selected a set of 95 defense red-color insect pattern plate armor. This splint mail had double the defense of Arctic Fur, but the price was also staggeringly high, costing Faye a full 20,000 gold coins. Aside from the plate armor, Faye also chose a Spartan-style high-level helmet with a T-shaped nose guard. At the top of the helmet, there was a golden feather standing up, and the design abnormally looked fine. The helmet had 13 defense and plus 18% resistance to fire damage. There was also a pair of heavy chain boots blue-color level equipment that had plus 12 defense and a lot of other additional special effects against fire, thunder, and poison. Armor, helmets, and heavy boots, Faye got all of them, and now he just needed a pair of powerful gloves to have a basic set. Unfortunately, after looking for a long time, Faye found that the gloves sold by NPC Farah here were all not up to his standard. After a slight sigh, he quickly thought of a method. Select and purchase a pair of white-scale beginner steel gloves, and then get Rogue Encampment as female blacksmith Charsi to imbue it later. Previously, after completing the mission of finding the magical iron hammer, Fei hadn't used the enhancement reward up until now. Now, he would be able to get a pair of powerful gloves with high stats. It was now time to replace his weapons. Fei took his time and picked for a while, replacing the two-handed axe from before. He selected one purple and one green broadsword that had the same length, separately called Soul's Massacre Claymore and Soul Gear's Crystal Sword. These two swords' damage were all between 8 to 25. Even when comparing to the original exaggerated two-handed axe from before, the new combination was still stronger, and they were all blue color level equipment, so they had special effects of the 4 types of resistance and weapon accuracy. The two swords costed Fei a total of 19,000 gold coins. Now, his barbarian character had already learned the double swing skill capable of using two swords at the same time. Not only was the effect of skill pretty sexy, but the damage was also more than doubled. These two swords were the primary weapons Fei prepared for his barbarian character. For his secondary weapon, the Storm Saber and Azure Spiked Shield were all unequipped and sold by Fei. He chose an enhanced light iron shield with a cool Holy Knight's iron cross-like symbol that had 22 defense and came with +3 resistance to all effects and 2 sockets, as well as a double-edged short axe called Blood-Splitting Double-Edged Axe. It had a single-handed damage of 7 to 20 with an additional fire damage effect +2 max damage, +41% max damage, and +32 weapon accuracy. As a result, with the left-handed shield and right-handed axe, the secondary weapon's damage was also more than doubled in attack power, and the effects that came with the weapons were simply amazing. Finally, Fei spent 3,000 gold coins and bought a 3-layer 16-grid large inventory. This way, transporting things from the real world to the Diablo world would be much easier. This shopping trip costed Fei close to 60,000 gold coins, but he was compensated a bit for selling his old equipment. So now he had 35,000 gold coins left and could still be regarded as a slightly wealthy man. Unfortunately, the NPCs here rarely sold rings, amulets, and other small items, so Fei had no choice but to dismiss that desire. Right now, he had 2 rings and 1 amulet on him, but unfortunately they all had effects like increasing lighting area and weapon accuracy, so it wasn't that useful, but at least it was better than nothing. During this process, Fei finally confirmed one thing. The NPCs at LitRPG didn't have their own intelligence at all. If the people at Rogue Encampment gave him a feeling of it being a lively world, the feeling that this Desert Pearl gave to Fei was the complete opposite. It was like a single-player version of the Diablo game. Every NPC dialogue and content was completely the same as his previous life's video game, without the slightest difference, and not even a slight change in the tone. And in addition to the fixed dialogue, their facial expression was rigid, their emotions were stagnant, and they wouldn't answer you anything, just like robots with a preset program. Why is that? No wonder why LitRPG gave off a lifeless feeling like a dead city, so that was actually the real reason. But as to the actual reason for the emergence of this phenomenon, Fei was puzzled, and he ultimately gave up and decided to just wait and see. After putting on a brand new set of equipment, Fei suddenly felt that every pore on his body was surging out vigorous strength. Whether it was defense or attack, the stats had more than doubled with this new equipment. The effect was simply amazing after putting on the new set of equipment, achieving high standings in both aesthetics and utility. Fei couldn't help but think of the iconic anime Saint Seiya from his past life and all kinds of sacred clothing from the magical zodiacs. Thinking about that, he got an idea, making all the armor on his body become invisible, and then shouted, "Show off zodiac cloth, fall on me." And then he controlled all the armor on his body to show up piece by piece. This scene was almost exactly like in the anime when the Bronze Saints summoned their clothes. Bright lights shot out of the armor, and such a magnificent scene greatly satisfied Fei's sick psychology. With his hands reaching into the void, 1 green and 1 purple light flashed, and then 2 lethal giant swords appeared in Fei's hands, making him feel like an elegant saint swordsman. Haha! These 2 swords, I will call them purple-green duo swords from now on. Fei was fully armed, and with purple-green duo swords, he swept out of LitRPG's city gate like a whirlwind and started a massacre in the wilderness, and those monsters that usually had to take 3 or 4 axe swings to kill now only needed 1 swing to eliminate them. The double swing skill raged a blade storm, and he left behind a trail of bodies. With the current strength of the barbarian character, even if I faced with those 4-star elites, I would still have a big chance of winning. After about 10 minutes of killing and testing, Han fully understood his true strength at that time. After finishing all this, without delay he went directly back to the city to find the blue-clothed Wariv. Chose, go west. And then with a flash of blue light Fei returned to the rogue encampment. Sir Fei, you are not a man of your words. Sir, we just want to go see big city scenery. We definitely won't bring you trouble, so just take us there once. Sir, you can't be so eccentric. You already took big sister Elena there once, why not take us too? Whatever Sister Elena can do, we can also do for you. Rogue encampment. At the place where Fei and Wariv disappeared half an hour ago. The young and beautiful female rogues saw Fei's return and suddenly got excited and came around him. He didn't know when, but the beautiful Lotus Elena also appeared here. She tried to get past all the sisters surrounding Fei and looked at him, who was a bit stunned, hesitated, and then softly said, Sir, if it is convenient, please take the sisters there to see it. They grew up here and every day they face countless demons, overcast skies and the black wilderness, and they are yearning for the bustling city. Stop! Fei stopped everyone from talking, then inexplicably looked at the group of thorny roses and asked in surprise, So, you guys didn't decide last minute to stay? Stay! The girls were shocked. Why would we decide to stay? It was obviously Sir Fei who didn't want to take us and ran off by yourself. Did that turn out to be the case? Fei was a bit confused, thought for a second and said, That's strange. Well, let's try again. Maybe we just didn't cooperate well last time. Everyone hold hands and close your eyes. The girls did what they were told. After a humming sound, a blue light flashed past. Fei disappeared in place and Elena also disappeared with Fei, but the other female rogues were all just standing in place looking at each other. Fei soon came back. What happened? Can I actually only take Elena there? Fei was shocked, and it didn't make sense. If he could bring someone there, then he should have been able to bring everyone there. They were all rogues and Elena could travel with him, but why couldn't the other girls? The group of people just looked at each other in an awkward silence. I just don't believe it. Let's try it a few more times. Humph. This time let's just try one at a time, Fei said as he grabbed a purple-haired little Loli's small hands. Then, there was a buzzing blue flash of light. He disappeared with Wariv, but the little Loli was still there. After a flash of blue light, Fei angrily returned. Try again. Fei disappeared again. He came back again. He disappeared again. 10 minutes later, Fei almost felt every girl's little hands. In the beginning, this shameless pervert actually had the thought of searching why the teleport didn't work. But by the end he basically used it as an excuse to take advantage and touch the soft little hands of all the girls. The female rogues were all beautiful young girls, so it would be stupid to not take advantage when there was a chance. However, the teleportation to LitRPG didn't work even once, aside from with Elena. This is strange. There must be an important reason I overlooked. Fei lowered his head in contemplation and began to think of some reasons. Why is it that although they're all female rogues, only Elena can be successfully brought to LitRPG, while other people can't? Fei suddenly noticed that this occasion was kind of similar to the situation before when he accidentally triggered one of the godly skills. Summon. Similarly, under the effects of the skill Summon, only Elena could be summoned to the real world, while no one else could. Thinking about it, Fei's eyes eventually stopped at the key figure, blue-clothed Wariv. A hint of a narrow smile surfaced on Wariv's face. Wariv, do you know what's going on? Fei seemed to have guessed something. Yes, sir, the reason is very simple. Ms. Elena is your mercenary. She signed the contract of employment with you, so she can use the power of employment to follow you through space-time teleportation. However, the other girls didn't enter a contract with you, so I'm afraid that I cannot take advantage of the power of contract to take them with you to LitRPG. Contract of employment? A flash of lightning flashed past Fei's mind. Suddenly, he felt that he caught a crucial point, and the mystery behind the summon skill also began to uncover its true face behind the mysterious veil. Yes, Fei suddenly realized. The reason why he could only summon Elena from the Diablo world to the real world was due to the existence of the employment contract between them. This contract was automatically signed after he finished the mercenary leader Cash's mission of killing blood crows. That was the reward for completing the mission, and that was also the secret factor that had been overlooked by him. If he could sign these kind of contracts with other people at the rogue encampment, would that mean that he could also summon other people into the real world? Faye couldn't wait to verify that idea. He bid farewell to Wariv and the reluctant female rogues, passed through several tents, and then at the southeast corner of the encampment's broken tent, he found the nun Aunt Ankara who was crafting potions. Contract. After listening to Faye's speculation, a light flashed in Ankara's eyes as if she had a sudden epiphany, and then she slowly said, "Your guess is right. This might be the reason why Elena is the only one that can follow you to your world." Then can I sign the employment contract with other people? That was the question Faye cared the most about. I'm afraid that you can't. Ankara shook his head. What? Why? Faye became really impatient. On the rogue continent, the employment contract is the most special type among all types of contract types, and it has the feature of being single and exclusive. Since you have already signed the contract with Elena, you will not be able to sign this kind of contract with anyone else, unless you take the initiative to lift the contract with Elena. Ankara's words slowly made Faye's heart sink, and the color of his face became uglier. Could it be destined that he could only summon one person from the Diablo world to the real world? Damn. However, in any case, lifting the contract with Elena was something Faye could never do. Elena already told him long ago that for a female rogue, being fired by the employer was equivalent to losing her glory, which was even worse than death. In addition, after cooperating with this beautiful mercenary for so long, the pair had reached the state where their hearts were connected, and Faye started having inseparable feelings towards this beautiful and soft female rogue. But at that moment, with a mysterious smile on her face, Aunt Ankara continued, "However, on the rogue continent, besides the employment contract, there are many other contract types that have similar effects, like the friendship contract, servant contract, part contract, apprentice contract, clan contract, and so on. If I didn't guess wrong, after signing these contracts, you can also achieve the effect you want. Why not give it a try?" White foam started coming out of Faye's mouth. At this point, he was finally 100% sure that he was just played by this mischievous old nun that loved pranking others. In the rear mountains in Chambord City, the underground cave maze. Buzzing. With a familiar light noise, something seemed to be trembling and struggling in the air. And then at the next moment, a huge sky blue-colored teleportation portal suddenly appeared in the stone hall. Faye strode out from the portal. Then, behind him, a thin figure enveloped in a purple robe soon followed and appeared, and soon after, a beautiful archer in fine armor with flame-burning red-colored hair appeared, and her whole body was surging with a strong atmosphere. Those two were Auntie Nun Ankara and Elena. Ah, how fresh, this air, how pure, this natural energy. Ankara sat in the stone hall with her eyes closed, took a deep breath of the air on Azeroth continent, and with an excited expression she said, "This is the feeling of a bright world. Finally." Faye and Elena looked at the emotional Ankara and neither said anything. As the rogue encampment's spiritual leader, Nun Ankara would rarely lose her calm. When darkness shrouded the rogue continent, she used her thin shoulders and held everyone's hope and became the rogue continent's prophet. Like a beacon in the night, she guided everyone's path forward and brought a weak trace of light and hope to the rogues. In everyone's eyes, all this time, Ankara had been the definition of calm management. But today, finally being able to feel the pure world energy in this stone hall, which was similar to the rogue continent's energy before it was invaded by darkness, made the leader a bit emotional. After a while, Ankara's feelings finally slowly stabilized. "Sir Faye, is this your country? The mysterious underground cave maze Elena was talking about? Why do I have a feeling of déjà vu?" Ankara felt the surrounding energy and asked in confusion. "I will first send someone to take you on a tour. Outside of this cave is an extremely beautiful city. I think you will definitely fall in love with this world." Faye smiled and said, "As for the strange feeling, Elena and I also had it before, but unfortunately we couldn't find the reason. Ankara thought for a moment and nodded to show approval. Faye made a move in his thought, instantly consuming all MP of his barbarian character. He opened 3 teleportation portals and summoned a dozen young beautiful female rogues and the big-chest beauty Charsi to the stone hall. After carefully instructing them with a few things, he walked out of the stone hall, called over the prison official Oleg in the distance that was in charge of demolition work, and ordered him to take the Ant Nun and the others on a tour around the city. "Understood, Your Majesty." Seeing how more than 10 people just suddenly came out of nowhere, Oleg simply felt that he didn't have enough brain cells to comprehend the situation. He didn't know how these guys avoid his and the soldiers patrolling outside sight and got into the stone hall, but His Majesty clearly knew them very well. Oleg didn't dare to ask, so he respectfully took Ankara and the others and walked out of the stone hall. At that moment, Faye suddenly grabbed Elena's little hand from behind. He whispered beside her ear, "You're already very familiar with this world, so take good care of Auntie Nun and the girls. Recently, there's been many outsiders coming into the city, so don't get into any conflicts with others. If there's anything that goes wrong, you can consult that fat guy." Faye pointed at the prison official Oleg. That fat guy was very experienced when dealing with people and situations. When whispering, Elena's hair above the edge of her ear gently brushed over Faye's cheek and played with his heartstrings. Elena lowered her head and felt the warmth from Faye's hand, as if she was already accustomed to Faye holding her small hands. She was no longer shy and just smiled and nodded. "You're not coming out with us?" she asked quietly. Faye smiled and said, "I still have something else to take care of." At this moment, the 2 people were like a little boy and girl that were trying to avoid the teacher's sight and secretly whispering at the back of the classroom. The atmosphere was charming, and there was a feeling of blushing and heart beating. At last, Elena left happily. The contract signed between Elena and Faye was the employment contract, and the one signed by other female rogues and Faye were more equal friendship contracts. As for the Auntie Nun Ankara, she just forced Faye to sign an apprenticeship contract with her. This meant that Faye had to take some time every day to study the mysterious pharmacology, magic scroll manufacturing, and other complex and profound knowledge. He didn't know why, but Auntie Nun Ankara had very high hopes for Faye, believing that this brave adventurer could inherit her mysterious skills. After sending away all the people, Faye came back to the stone hall. Sitting down on his stone chair, he placed his hand on the smooth desktop. Faye thought about his future plans in his head. If he could kidnap Ankara and Charsi, who had magical potion-making and forging skills, into the real world, this would definitely have a significant effect on the future development of Chambord City. He decided to select a batch of talented kids from the Chambord Civil and Military School and let them become Ankara and Charsi's apprentices to learn their skills. It would be best to acquire these magical skills for use in Chambord City. A great man had once said that education must start with babies. The series of facts had already verified Faye's guess, and it also solved all the problems. After signing a variety of contracts, he could now freely summon other people from Rogue Encampment under his own magical points support. Except this time, the mercenary leader Kasha, the wretched white-beard Uncle Kane, and some other people did not come with them to the real world because Rogue Encampment still needed someone to stay and guard it. Although the demon boss and Ariel of the Rogue Continent had already been killed by Faye, the demons that wandered the wilderness had not completely disappeared. Their strength was weakened, but they could still pose a threat to Rogue Encampment. After finishing sorting out his ideas, Faye opened up the portal and returned to the Diablo world. This time, he didn't choose the barbarian class. On the 3D holographic projection screen, he picked a brand new job druid. According to the plan, in the next few days, Faye decided to take full advantage of the 4 hours a day that he could enter the Diablo world. He would let all the other characters beat the first small map, Rogue Encampment, to see if he could get any mysterious rewards from the mysterious cold voice when all 7 classes beat the map. When Faye entered the Diablo to crazily increase his own strength, Chambord City had become increasingly lively because of the King's Ascension ceremony. Visitors from other countries could be seen along the street. Some small traders had a keen sense of smell for business opportunities, so they formed small business groups, bustled to the city, and all the streets in Chambord City became filled selling the voice of gods. The city suddenly became incomparably bustling, and the flow of people had more than doubled from before, and even the spacious Golden Road had become crowded up. At this moment, a wave of beautiful young girls attracted a lot of people's attention. Among these girls, other than one person completely covered in a purple robe with a covered face, the other people were all wearing simple armor, exposing large areas of white skin. They were dressed simply and humbly, and all of them had an extremely pretty face, like a bunch of little fairies bouncing in the flow of people. As if they had never seen anything before, they asked about this and that and were curious of whatever they saw. The young faces didn't have the slightest sense of precaution, appearing really naive, lovely, and innocent, like a group of innocent, silly girls. But with many people coming and going on the streets, although a lot of people were having some kinds of thoughts, no one really dared to go up and chat with the girls. The reason was very simple. Although these girls seemed to be very silly, the atmosphere leaked out from their body was not weak at all. This was especially the case for the 20-year-old or so girl with flame-like red hair, unparalleled beauty, a jade bone and icy white skin, just like a goddess from heaven. The strangely designed golden color long bow on her back leaked traces of terrifying demonic power, and what was scarier was the insuppressible powerful atmosphere on her body. That was an extremely dangerous feeling, as if a moon crescent blade was out of its sheath. Moreover, there was one of King Alexander's favorite minions, prison official Oleg, who was following these girls around like a servant. There was just too much information revealed from this, so these beautiful girls were likely good friends of King Alexander from outside of Chambord City coming here to congratulate His Majesty for the ascension. The rogues were happily shopping and enjoying a moment of relaxation. On the rogue continent, they never enjoyed such a lively scene, and every day they had to be nervous and cautious, ready to face devils and monsters at any time and face the threat of death under the shroud of darkness. They also witnessed their sisters dying miserably in front of them numerous times, but at this moment, the girls finally relaxed the pressure in their hearts, freely enjoying the novelty of the scene that they had never experienced before, just like little birds that were just let out of their cage, beginning to fly around carelessly. As they were walking, a sudden loud voice sounded in the front. A lot of people were crowded there looking at something, and from time to time waves of laughter sounded, making the scene exceptionally lively. The girls saw this and became curious and happily went up to watch. What the joyful girls didn't notice was that not very far behind them, a few pair of eyes had quietly locked onto them. His Royal Highness, they went over. What do we do? Follow them first. Do not easily provoke them. Find out their background first. Underground cave maze. Stone hall. A deep blue-colored portal ripped the space and suddenly appeared, and Faye came out from inside. He had reached the 4-hour time limit, so he had no choice but to leave the Diablo world. In the past 2 hours and a bit, because Faye had already accumulated a lot of experience and skills when playing the other characters, he leveled up quickly and was actually able to incredibly get his druid's level to 10, completing 3 missions. Clear out the evil cave, eliminate the traitor Bloodcrow, save the pervert Grandpa Kane in one breath, leaving only 3 more missions left to beat the first map. If I manage my time well, I'll just need tomorrow to complete these 3 tasks. Faye was full of confidence in leveling up. At this point, he was still in his druid mode, so when he casually waved his hand, the druid class's unique chaos elemental energy fluctuation flashed past, and within it, a giant white wolf appeared out of thin air. It came to Faye's side, and as if it saw its friend, it intimately and gently clung onto Faye's leg. The white wolf's body exuded a thick sense of danger. This was the druid's skill, Summon Wolf Spirit. This skill had been powered up to level 3 by Faye, so now he could summon 3 white wolves at the same time to battle for him. What was mentionable was that each white wolf had the overall battle power of a 1-star warrior and couldn't be overlooked. Beast summoning skills were one of the druid's most powerful skills. In addition, Faye also had the ability to directly shapeshift into a werewolf and a werbear. After transforming, he would have the wolf's agility, attack, speed, and the bear's power and defense. Currently, he picked the druid summon skills and shapeshift skills, leaving only the elemental skills category blank, mainly because the skills were magic skills, and it was a bit repetitive with the sorcerer class. After getting a feel of the druid's features, Faye held back the urge to turn into a werewolf and run around naked. He switched back to barbarian mode, took out a few high-grade gems from his inventory, directly left the underground cave maze and came to the base of Chambord City's holy church. Church, Your Majesty, I didn't expect you to actually come in person. We feel incredibly honored. Towards Faye's arrival, Priest Zola and Knight Leader Luciano were all very surprised and a little afraid. For the Ascension ceremony in 3 days, these two could be said to have put in strenuous effort, as they spent a lot of financial and material resources to please Faye and receive his favor. Now, it seemed to be effective. Well, you two have been working hard recently. Faye saw the two men's servant-like faces and was delighted, but he didn't show any expression on his face. Despite being a guest, he sat down on the only chair in the room like the owner and looked at the two people as they lightly said, no trouble at all. To be able to serve your majesty is our honor. The bearded Luciano was finally clever and hastily replied, well, I will remember you guys. Faye looked past the two's faces. A pure and wholly majestic force deliberately emerged from his body, as if a holy god descended from heaven, and then he slowly said, I came to you guys today because I have something here that need you guys to help me with. Your Majesty, please give us your order. We are willing to give up our lives to serve you. The two people heard Faye's request and were suddenly very happy. What they were most afraid of was if Faye had no need for them. Since he now opened his mouth for help, that was best for them, and it showed that the king was beginning to slowly accept them. Well, okay then. I will be blunt, Faye said, and with a flip of his palm, for high-quality gems appeared in his hands, containing a sparking, attractive light. Use the church's channels, and convert these high-quality sorcerer stones all into the lowest level of low-quality sorcerer stones. Oh God! These are actually high-tier sorcerer stones. My lord, and this pierce of sorcerer stone with surging fire elemental energy. Could this be the rare perfect sorcerer stones? Your Majesty, this... Mazzola couldn't help but exclaimed. The only thing Mazzola could feel were his dry lips and his blank eyes. Faye couldn't blame these two for reacting this way, since it's just that the value of these stones in his hands were way too high. The worst one among them could already be exchanged for at least 100 low-grade sorcerer stones, and just 2 of them alone was enough to beat the whole box of low-grade sorcerer stones values which the two contributed to Faye a few days ago. Not mentioning the other 1 high-tier sorcerer stone and 1 perfect quality sorcerer stone, even if they were to be exchanged, the value was still going to be incredible, almost reaching millions of low-grade sorcerer stones. For people like the duo that would even feel bad for a few days about a box of sorcerer stones, this was no doubt an incredible wealth. So, could it be? You guys can't do it. Looking at the way the dumbfounded duo, Faye frowned and asked, No, it can be converted, it can definitely be converted. It's just going to take time. Maybe a little more time. Mazzola seemed to have woken up from a dream and hastily replied. His heart was still currently beating crazily, as this was definitely a golden opportunity for him. The high-grade sorcerer stones, especially the perfect ones, were extremely scarce. If they could use the church's channel to exchange for it, it would definitely be a great merit, and it could leave a good image in Pope Sergielli's mind. Need time. Faye slightly frowned, which made both Mazzola and Luciano's heart race, and then they heard Faye continue asking, How much more time do you need? Your Majesty, if we fully convert the 4 gems in your hands, it will be worth more than 1 million low-grade sorcerer stones. This quantity, even if performed by Pope Sergielli's Zenit Holy Palace's Isaac Cathedral, it is still impossible to prepare within 1 or 2 days. Mazzola carefully answered, trying his best to sound more convincing. In addition to the round trip, it will also require a lot of knights or mercenaries to guard, and the whole process will take at least 4 to 5 months to complete. 4 to 5 months? That's too long. Faye shook his hand. I wonder what your Majesty is exchanging low-grade sorcerer stones for? Mazzola carefully asked. Faye's look suddenly changed, and his eyes landed on Mazzola's face like sharp swords. Mazzola felt a huge wave of pressure instantly blow towards him, suffocating him for a moment before he quickly kneeled down and explained, Your Majesty, Please don't misunderstand me. I don't intend to inquire about your plans. It's just that I think that if you don't need that many low-grade sorcerer stones in one go, we can exchange it slowly in batches. For example, we can trade 1,000 stones at a time, and that way the speed will be quicker and it also avoid the risk of a large-scale delivery. Faye's eyes lit up after hearing that suggestion. Exchanging for 1,000 sorcerer stones at once and trading 3 to 4 times every month would be enough to support his expenses in the Diablo world. Selling these gems to the NPC could ensure that the 7 classes he played would have no obstacles in meeting the demand for gold coins, and that way his leveling speed would inevitably be many times faster. Very well. For this task, you can make the arrangements for me. Faye gently flicked his fingers, and the flawed ruby gem and the regular sapphire gem flew into Mazzola's hands. This is a medium and high-grade sorcerer stone, worth about 11,000 low-grade sorcerer gems. I just need 10,000 of them. The remaining 1,000 will just be the compensation for your hard work. Your Majesty, to serve you is our glory. We both don't dare to ask for compensation. Although the 1,000 low-grade sorcerer stones' value was far more than their salary together with some desperately plundered wealth, the two didn't dare to have the slightest greed this time. For the reward that I give out, no one dares to refuse, Faye said in a cold voice. Mazzola and Luciano looked at each other for a second and both saw the insuppressible ecstasy in each other's pupils, and their hearts of greed finally overcame the fear, and then they both quickly knelt down and thanked Faye for the reward. Yes, that's how things should be. Faye's tone warmed up. These are the 1,000 low-grade sorcerer stones that you deserve. I have never ill-treated any of my loyal followers. If you two get the job done well, your future rewards will obviously increase. However, if you two dare to disobey my orders behind my back, His voice had hardly finished before a pure gold holy force emerged from Faye's body like a ball of burning holy flame. After a subtle flash, the stone chair below him silently turned into a ball of dust and dissipated in the air as if it had never been there. Paladin's skill, Holy Flame. In the Azeroth Continent's Holy Church, this skill also had another name, Evil Washing Holy Flame, which was an extremely high-tier skill that combined offense with defense, and only those big-name figures in the Holy Church was qualified to master this kind of power. As for the little 3-star priests stationed in small remote countries like Mazzola, being able to master the simple skill Light Out, which was similar to the Paladin's Holy Bolt, was considered to be the peak. This scene made both people's heart cover in cold sweat, as they felt a biting chilly air directly surging from tailbone to head, like being in a freezer. They didn't even dare to take big breaths. If you try to disobey me, your end will be just like this stone chair. Faye finished, and then he directly got up and left the church. Soon, only Mazzola and Luciano were left in the room. They awkwardly got up from the ground and took a look at each other, and the expression on their faces were especially rich. They were both trying very hard to cover up the fear in their hearts. We can't be wrong now, he must be a god's favorite child. The rattlesnake Mazzola stared at the place where the stone chair was, which was now just a pile of fine white powder as he exclaimed, "Otherwise, how could he master such high-level magic, evil washing holy flame, and even take out master-grade sorcerer stones? Aside from this kind of big figure, who else could do it? Luckily, we were smart and already buttered up to this big figure. But why is this big figure converting high-tier sorcerer stones to large number of low-grade sorcerer stones? This seems to be an unprofitable trade." Luciano was puzzled. How can we guess what these high-ups are thinking? Mazzola rubbed his temples, stared at the 2 sorcerer stones in his hands and said, "Let's just think about how to quickly convert these 2 stones into low-grade sorcerer stones. You have to personally take care of this task, and make sure to keep it confidential. Don't let those big figures in St. Petersburg know for the time being." Ah, how cute these little things are. The female rogue squeezed through the crowd and finally got to the front, where a little shop was surrounded by the crowd, and a few mercenary-looking young men and women were desperately shouting. In the dozens of fine little iron cages by their feet contained many bizarre, lovely, and cute baby magic beast cubs. "Oh, come take a look, giant tail lemming's cub, just weaned. It has a gentle temperament, and it's very easy to maintain. 1-year-old windwing parrot, It can learn the hardest to pronounce fairy language. Haha. Hurry and look at this shivering little guy, man. You absolutely wouldn't have guessed that it's the cub of a Tier 6 magic beast golden hair roar. My teammates and I tried everything and finally stole it from its mother. And in adult stage it can grow 6 wings and its flying speed is unparalleled. Hee hee. A real white tiger. Descendant of the Light Emperor. The mercenaries desperately shouted at the crowd to introduce their goods. And some of those little cubs were scared by the huge crowd to the point of shivering. Some were just quietly growling, and some just closed their eyes and lazily laid in the cage, looking cute like a bunch of little fairy tale creatures. It was just that the mercenaries' price tags were a bit high, so no one really took out their wallet to make a purchase. They crowded this place just to take a look for fun. The female rogues pushed to the front and all of their eyes lit up. As people that had to deal with ugly demonic monsters from birth in the Diablo world, the cutest things they've seen were just gray-haired big mice. The little cuties inside the cages in front of them could instantly win their heart. Elena took out a little chubby fishing cat that was taking a nap out of the cage, placed it in her arms as she gently stroked it. The other female rogues all had their harvest, smiling as they picked up other furry little animals. And even Auntie Nun Ankara's love was flooding, staring at a pure white feather owl beast and refusing to move her eyes. You should buy them. Just look at how cute they are. A clever female mercenary saw the hope to make money and began to encourage them to make the decision. The female rogues heard and looked towards Elena, and Elena looked at Nun Ankara, and Ankara seemed to have felt something too. She reached inside her purple robe, but then her face blushed because she didn't have any money on her. In addition, she didn't know if the money from the Diablo world would still work in this world. The few men that had been tailing these girls saw this scene, and they suddenly felt brightness ahead. The leading muscular warrior with long blonde hair gave a hinting look, and the handsome but a little gloomy young man on his side pushed through the crowd and shouted, "These little guys, my royal highness will buy them all." The handsome young man spilled at least 100 gold coins, and then turned around to smile and look at Elena, and then said, "My royal highness ordered me to come and buy these little guys to give them to you ladies as gifts. We intend to befriend you beautiful ladies. I don't know whether you can grant our request." Elena and the others surprisingly followed the handsome young man's eyes and looked towards the outside of the crowd, and they saw a muscular warrior with long blonde hair being surrounded by several well-dressed guards who were smiling towards them. The so-called Royal Highness was probably referring to this person. This blonde-hair warrior stood tall and proudly. He was pretty handsome, had cold and bright eyes, but his snarling nose with a slightly violent and domineering feeling undermined his entire impression. Although Elena hadn't come into contact with strangers outside of the rogue encampment in the Diablo world, from facing demons and monsters every day, they grew very sensitive to power. Although this blonde-hair warrior's strength was contained, they can still feel that this man's combat strength was probably not below Sir Fei, and he should be the 4-star level that Fei referred to. Thinking of how Sir Fei was recently officially ascending the throne, and a lot of guests from other countries came to congratulate Fei, Elena didn't want to bring any trouble for Fei, so she smiled at the blonde-hair warrior and said, "Thank you to this highness, but we don't know each other, so we will pay for them this time." Then, Elena looked at prison official Oleg. This fat man was smart, so how would he not understand this meaning? In his heart, he had already planned these beautiful rogues into Fei's future imperial harem formation, and seeing the scene today, he really wanted to ask what kind of retarded dead fools these people were that actually dared to fight for women with King Alexander. It was the same as a dog asking to get beaten by biting its blacksmith owner. He immediately shook his fat ass and walked up with his wallet, provocatively looked at the handsome young man and the blonde-hair warrior, and then said loudly to those young mercenaries, "These magic beast cubs, we will pay twice the price and buy them all." The handsome young man's face immediately changed. Even the blonde-hair warrior in the distance had a trace of haze flash through his eyes, but he masked it really well and laughed. "If that's the case, I will leave these little guys with you ladies. My name is Ayabina. I will be in Chambord City these days, so I hope we can meet again." Then, with no further inquiries, he turned around with the guards and left. The blonde-hair warrior's action and words made many people sigh in admiration. He had a good temperament that wasn't too warm or too cold. It didn't arouse feelings of disgust and exclusion from Elena and the others, and it also left a good impression for the ladies, setting up a perfect opportunity for their next coincidental meet. But it seemed that this handsome young man didn't want to forget it. He felt that he was humiliated. A pernicious look began flowing in his eyes. He looked at the show-off fat man Oleg, and then his eyes glanced past Elena and the others. But when his eyes swept past the golden long bow on Elena's back, his pupils immediately contracted, as if he thought of something. He picked up the gold coins he dropped on the ground, hastily caught up with the blonde-hair warrior and whispered something into his ears. The blonde-hair warrior stopped his steps, and his eyes fell on Elena's long golden bow that was emitting a dim light as he carefully observed for a moment. Then his face changed. That's actually a 4-star magic bone? The blonde-hair warrior finally recognized it and swallowed a deep breath. Although he was standing very far away, he could still clearly feel the volatile fluctuation of magic from that golden bow. The cold chill shot up into the sky, just like a 4-star sorcerer standing there in the distance. Such force and atmosphere could only be exerted by a 4-star magic weapon. Such 4-star magic weapons, for the star-level warriors, were absolute peerless treasures. On the Azeroth continent, magic equipment and weapons could be divided into 9 star levels according to their quality. Levels 1 to 3, the bottom 3-star levels of magic weapons were relatively common and also very average, but levels 4 to 6, the middle 3-star levels, and levels 7 to 9, the top 3-star levels of magic weapons were a lot rarer. In general, only high-level blacksmiths and magicians could forge 3-star level or higher magic weapons, and to all star-level warriors, a 3-star level and above magic weapon was even more important than their own life, and it was closely related to the warrior's personal strength level up. If a warrior broke past the star levels and evolve into moon-level elites, if he wanted to make further progress, there were 3 options: weapon leveling, beast leveling, and physical body leveling. Among these 3 moon-level elites' training methods, weapon leveling was the most common one, and it was also the easiest and most effective one. But if one wanted to pursue the weapon leveling path, he had to choose a high-quality weapon as his spiritual weapon and train both the weapon and himself. To a moon-level elite, how far they could travel on their path of training depended on the quality and property of the chosen spiritual weapon, and the relationship between the man and weapon was complementary. Therefore, it was clear how important a high-star-level weapon was. Although Eabina's identity was the prince of a 3rd-tier subsidiary city Thracian, even he didn't have a 4-star level weapon, and that was why his face changed when Elena's weapon appeared in his sight. If I can get that 4-star level long bow into my hands, Eabina's mind started quickly running. His heart was about to beat out of his chest, and all of a sudden, the gentle and friendly image he originally gave to other people disappeared and his entire body exuded a violent atmosphere. However, Eabina was an extremely cautious man. That was why Thracian City sent him to Chambord City this time to execute a plan. After staring at that group of female rogues for a long time, Eabina quickly estimated this group of females' background, hesitated for a second, and finally this rationality overcame his greed. A 3-star level archer with a 4-star level high-quality longbow, her background was absolutely not simple, not to mention that in addition to that 3-star level red-haired peerless beauty, the other dozen girls were also exuding an atmosphere of warriors that weren't below 1-star level. Such a force couldn't be ignored. Maybe they came from a heavenly background. The blonde-haired warrior Eabina eventually decided to be cautious and investigate a bit first. He whispered a few words to a middle-aged guard beside him, and that guard turned around and disappeared into the crowd. Then, their group left, leaving behind 2 guards that were a bit clever to quietly follow Elena and the others. 3 hours later, these little guys, they were left behind by the girls? In the underground stone maze in the back mountains of Chambord City, Faye looked at the dozen of all kinds of starving baby cubs in the stone hall. His eyeballs were almost falling out from staring too much. Women, they are really strange creatures with maternal love. Yes, Your Highness. Before Miss Elena and the others left, they left these little guys here. Oleg, with an embarrassed face, was running around in circles like a nanny, feeding an active small golden-haired Denglong fresh goat milk. This Denglong's appearance was just like a tiger, except the addition of 2 small wings on the back. It had a hairy yet very cute look. It was just that the black and gem-like eyes always had a glint of vigilance, and regardless of how Oleg tried to appease it, it still refused to lick that fresh goat milk in the shallow plate. Poor Fatty. When had he ever encountered such a situation? He couldn't beat the animals, and all he could do was sweat profusely. Faye saw the scene and couldn't help but laugh. Elena and the others could only stay in the real world for about 4 hours, and when the time was up, they had to return to the Diablo world, but they couldn't bring things from the real world to the Diablo world like Faye, so they could only leave these little guys at Oleg's place. It's just that, although the fat man Oleg was indeed skilled at licking butts and buttering up to people, he was still far from being experienced in feeding these little cuties, which were even worse than those naked but little kids on the Chambord city streets. No matter how much he tried, these little bastards just didn't want to cooperate. Let me give it a try. Faye found it pretty interesting, so he took over the shallow plate of food from Oleg, smiled and came up to the golden-haired Denglong to feed it. Who knew that the little guy didn't even respect the king his majesty, as it opened its black eyes, bared out its little tiger teeth, shivered its chubby body, and then turned in disdain. Making a very human-like action, it stuck out its ass, kicked its hind leg and kicked away the silver plate, splashing all the white goat milk onto Faye. Seeing this scene, even the blacksmiths and soldiers working in the distance secretly laughed. Faye got angry from the embarrassment, and he was just about to raise his hand to give this guy a slap, but after seeing this little thing lying on the ground with a lowered head and its ears down and its eyes getting teary, Faye couldn't bear to slap it, and reluctantly sighed, picked up the silver plate on the ground and looked around at the other small animals. Faye had to admit that these little magic beasts were indeed very cute and lethal to him. This fishing cat was like a small ball of fur with squinting eyes. It was said that this docile kitten, after reaching adult age, could reach about half a meter in size and could dive down hundreds of meters underwater to capture giant fish. It was worthy of being called the king of the underwater world. There was also a little thing that looked nothing different from a normal parrot, but it had 4 legs and was covered with colorful feathers, with a sharp barb on its beak. It was said to be a type of extremely wise magic beast, and as long as it was trained properly, it could become proficient in languages of all the races in the world. These little guys were colorful and all very furry, but they had timid looks, shrank into little balls, watching everyone with caution and doubt, and refusing to lick the fresh milk in front of them in any case. Faye was getting close to opening up their mouth and pouring it in. At that moment, Faye suddenly thought of something. Taking a new approach, he switched to Druid mode. According to legends, Druids had the power of nature and were capable of getting close to any animals and plants, so it should be able to appease these little guys. Sure enough, after Faye switched to Druid mode, something magical happened. Faye felt as if he was merged with the air and was capable of clearly feeling the emotions of the small animals. The winged golden Dunglong's hostility was the most serious, with a trace of fear, just like a lost little girl looking for its mom. The fishing cat was full of vigilance. The wind-wing parrot was considering a hunger strike or even suicide, and that white feather owl beast was just like a philosopher, looking at everything with its cold eyes. This was a very subtle feeling. The small animals didn't talk, but Faye was able to easily distinguish their emotions, like an open body of consciousness, and Faye became like their kind and merged into their group. Faye tried using his most sincere mood to communicate with the little guys. Then, something happened that left the prison official Oleg and many other soldiers staggered. They just saw that those timid little creatures suddenly act as if they saw their own parents, cheering and intimately rushing towards Faye. The snow-white owl beast and wind-wing parrot beast each occupied one of Faye's shoulders. The chubby little fishing cat extended its sharp claws, climbed along Faye's leg and easily got to the top and squatted in Faye's hair. As for the cutest winged golden Denglong, it was already hungry to the point of almost fainting. It stumbled and bit onto Faye's pants and didn't want to let go no matter what. Then, spending less than a minute or two, the little guys already cleaned up all the food that was brought to them, just as if they could understand Faye's words or something. They became abnormally well-behaved, and the 4 little beats even brawled a bit just to fight for the comfiest spot on Faye. This was the magical power of Druid. The prison official Oleg just blankly stared as everything happened. The unexpected discovery made Faye's heart rejoice. Being able to domesticate magic beasts had an extraordinary significance to him. If used properly, he could even try to build a magic beast army or form a magic beast knight legion. That way, Chambord City could significantly improve its strength and rule the world. Faye happily teased the small animals, but just at that moment, his personal guard Fernando Torres, who had recently been following Drogba and the others with extreme training, suddenly rushed out from the corridor over in the distance, and from afar he was already panting and shouting, "Your Majesty, hurry! Something happened at the palace. Sir Best was injured. Miss Angela, she—" The blonde-haired teen's face had panic written all over it. A whirlwind in the air drew a sharp, piercing roar, tearing the sky and suddenly coming out from the back mountains of Chambord City, shooting itself towards the palace's direction. It attracted everyone's attention. Everyone looked up. A man's silhouette was vaguely visible among the whirlwind, flashing on and off in the sky, and instantly charged into the palace. After the silhouette disappeared, the path it traveled left an irresistible and lingering pressure, and everyone in the city couldn't help but get a chill down their spines. In a dark corner of Chambord City, a figure that hid his whole body in a black cloak looked up at the powerful atmosphere in the sky and then bowed down into deep thought. It's him. It's definitely him. Damn. This idiot indeed became stronger. It looks like I have to make some changes to my plan. At the same time, at the ex-military official Konka's mansion, under the fragrant flowers under the tree, the wind blew up an elegant woman's chrysanthemum-like soft long hair. She sat on the stone chair and looked up. A touch of joy quickly flashed across her eyes as she softly asked, "Roman, this scent? It's that guy. He became stronger again. That speed, it's truly incredible." Behind that woman, under the wooden frame which the long vines spread, the blonde knight who had a baby face and a charming smile on his always placid face showed a trace of surprise. At this moment, a mighty female warrior came in from the courtyard, leaned over the woman's side and said a few words. "Oh? Those demons and monsters indeed all came? Very well, you guys go and prepare too." The woman listened, smiled, and confidently said, "This time, let him break an arm." "Understood, Your Highness." The two were about to leave with orders when they heard the woman suddenly say, "Oh right, remember to tell little Prince, let him better not go out these days and just stay in the mansion peacefully. Also, pass on my command, let that guy come and see me. As a courtier, it's time for him to visit his master." "Understood, Your Highness." The female warrior and the blonde knight walked out of the yard. The elegant woman sat quietly on the stone chair and felt that clear scent of pressure in the air. No one knew what kind of storm was brewing inside that terrifying head of hers that scared countless St. Petersburg's nobles. A few pieces of yellow leaves were blown off from the branches, looking very lonely and floating in front of the woman's eyes. "My time is running out, big brother. Let me help you once again for the last time." At the same time, at the guest house of Chambord City, in a quiet little courtyard, Trace's Prince Eabina looked shockingly at the lingering powerful breath in the air. "Who is this? What a powerful strength, it must be at least 4 stars of power." He went to the palace's direction. Could it be a master of the Chambord City? "Okocha, quickly investigate that man's origin." Eabina ordered a guard beside him. The guard named Okocha immediately took the order and left the yard. "Teacher, do you think this mysterious master will affect our plan?" After dismissing all the guards around him, Eabina suddenly thought of something and started asking towards the air in front of him. The next second, a group of visible ripples formed in the air, and slowly, a thin and short figure came out from thin air in front of him. This mysterious person was wrapped in a white cloth, and even his face was covered up in it. With a hoarse voice, he said, "A mysterious 4-star level master will indeed become a variable. Investigate him, and before the event takes place, if necessary, kill him." This mysterious master revealed a very powerful strength. "I don't have complete certainty to kill him. After investigating his background, I hope that teacher can personally take care of it." Eabina was always revealing his cautious character. "Okay." Saving words like it was gold, After saying a single word, the ripples in the air once again swung open, and this white figure disappeared into the air. Even the strange, powerful atmosphere that came with him also disappeared without a trace. A horrifying stealth technique. Behind the Chambord City Church, inside a very secluded garden, a young blonde young man also felt the powerful thrilling breath in the air. He tightly locked his brows and asked, "Who is it?" It originated from the back mountain, could it be? The thought of this shocked this young blonde beautiful man. In silence, as if making some kind of decision, Chambord City was still lively. However, an invisible storm was quietly and secretly brewing. The rainstorm was coming and the wind was already here. The person that stormed through the sky was of course His Majesty the King. Not waiting for his personal bodyguard Officer Torres to finish, the moment Faye heard that Best was injured, he instantly switched to barbarian mode. Not caring about the mana consumption, he continuously used the barbarian skill Leap, leaving the underground stone cave maze after a few flashes, not hiding his level 21 barbarian's domineering force in the slightest as he flew back to the king's hall. What happened in the palace? How did his father-in-law actually get injured? What happened to Angela? Boom! Faye was anxious like a ticking time bomb as he crash-landed onto the stone steps before the palace. The giant boulder steps under Faye's feet began to crack like a spider net with Faye at the center, as if a meteor crashed into the ground from the sky. This was the result of him not controlling his terrifying power. The four little beasts on Faye were all tightly clutching onto his clothes and hair, shouting "wow wow" during the high-speed flight. Faye didn't pause at all as he kept on using the skill Leap. His figure flashed again, leaving behind a series of afterimages in the sky, and he instantly arrived at the palace's back garden. There was the sound of a riot. Which bastard dares to make trouble in my fucking palace? Faye was furious and he rushed inside like a storm. But after stepping into the back garden, the scene in front of him suddenly stunned him in place. He saw that his future father-in-law's originally combed, meticulous black hair was now a weedy chicken coo, with strands of bloodstains trickling down his arm. His chest was violently moving up and down as he breathed heavily. However, his father-in-law's situation wasn't bad, because he was the one doing the murdering right now. The old white-face Best right now. How was there any trace of an elegant aristocratic appearance left? His feet were bare. He didn't know where one shoe flew to, but the other one was gripped in his hand as if he saw the murderer of his father or something. He used the shoe as a weapon, roaring frantically and chasing a black big horse that Faye didn't know where it came from. This old handsome man did indeed get hurt, but it was just a little skin injury, and there was completely no need to worry. Otherwise, how could this old white face still have the spirit to rage around the garden to catch that black horse, jumping and running like the wind? Angela and the blonde little lowly Jima were unharmed. They didn't know whether they should cry or laugh as they led the guards and followed the old handsome man, trying their best to calm down the Best in his berserker state. But this crazy old man's strength surprised a lot of people. Coupled with the guards who didn't dare to use too much force, this royal official who didn't learn the slightest martial arts had actually easily gotten out from the net formed by the guards and continued to chase that big black horse. What is really happening right now? Faye finally relaxed, but then black lines ran down his forehead like a waterfall. Just as he was asking, he saw that the big black horse finally got forced into a dead corner between the garden rockery and the wall by the old handsome man Best. With no way to run, seeing the old man's murderous approach accompanied by a hey-hey sneer, the big black horse finally made noise from its mouth. Bark, bark, bark. Whine, what the fuck? Faye was shocked. Is that a dog barking? He almost thought that he had a problem with his ears. Even the white feather owl beast, winged parrot beast, little fishing cat and double-winged golden hare Denglong that were all tightly lying on his shoulders had their hairs suddenly become erect, as if they encountered great danger. The small fishing cat hid itself inside Faye's hair, and the golden hare Denglong directly covered its eyes with its paws. Faye took a closer look. Amitabha the fucking Buddha. What a guy, the beast that was forced into the corner. How is that a big dark horse? It was clearly a giant, disobedient black dog. Its powerful legs firmly grasped onto the ground, and between its toes were sharp snow-white claws. Its huge body tilted backwards like a giant bow that was fully extended, and from its throat it issued a threatening roar. Its whole body of muscles flexed, fully demonstrating its wild power. At this moment, Faye thought there was something wrong with its eyes. Too cruel, too strong, too violent. Such a look. How did that belong to a dog? It was clearly a beast from the abyss of hell. But who could fucking tell me why the fuck was there a horse-sized super black dog in my palace? Just when Faye was wondering, something even more bizarre happened. He saw his old father-in-law not caring at all about that giant black terrifying beast's threat and fearlessly going up to it and smacking that big black dog's forehead with his shoe. That big black dog had a hateful face and growled threateningly for a long time. While it just needed one bite to cut Best into 3 pieces, it actually didn't dare to fight back at all. It also did a very humanly action, using its forelimbs to hold his head, swallowing and whining. His big eyes were full of grievances. "I will let you dead dog bite me. Let you bite me, ungrateful bastard." The old man fiercely slapped the dog, while acting like an angry kindergarten child, whirring in his mouth. "Father!" Angela cried and laughed as she led the guards to drag Best to the side. Faye felt like he was looking at a world that he was completely unfamiliar of. Best got dragged away by the guards, and that giant black dog was still using its forelimbs to cover its forehead, which was covered in shoe prints. Its watery eyes rolled around a few circles, and it finally saw Faye, who was standing in the distance. "Wong, wong, wong." The black dog excitedly barked a few times. Then putting force onto its hind legs, it leaped into the air, transforming into a black whirlwind, and suddenly rushed in front of Faye. Faye saw that this beast squatted down on the floor, its tail wagging like a windmill, breathing loudly, and its black eyes filled with an aggrieved and pleased look. Its long pink tongue hanged out. It was like a child that saw its parents, rubbing its head against Faye's shoulder, and he just needed to give Faye a few licks on his face now. After this dog had its short, intimate moment with Faye for a while, it then acted as if it was in power, squatting to the side of Faye, and barking a few times at the old handsome man in the distance whose anger still didn't completely go away yet. This was the standard sample of the idiom, dog threatening based on its master's power. Faye's mouth opened up to an O shape. "A god, a Buddha, are you serious? What a human-like big black dog." It gave people the illusion as if the dog's intelligence suddenly reached enlightenment and became like a living person, instead of a beast. Faye carefully observed it. The more he looked at the black dog, the more familiar it felt. In the end, he suddenly realized, what the fuck? Isn't this the wild dog Angela picked up from the back mountains? It's just that its size suddenly grew numerous times to an incredibly huge state. It was a bit taller than Faye when completely lying down. When standing, it was at least 2 meters tall and 4 meters long. Was this still a dog? Faye almost didn't need to think. This must be the after effect of giving it the Hulk potion. Looks like this lucky big black dog finally persevered through the painful experience when the drug was transforming its body, and it bravely survived. Under the power of the drug, an incredible mutation occurred to its body, and the magical spiritual fluctuation contained by the Hulk potion also affected the big black dog's soul, letting him be filled with affection and loyalty towards Faye. Otherwise this bastard would be like before, gritting its teeth and growling and chasing Faye all over the palace, instead of being this intimate in front of Faye with its tail wagging like a windmill. And after seeing the big black dog, the 4 little beasts on Faye also reacted. Maybe it was due to the natural nature of being enemies between cats and dogs, but the chubby and meatball-like little fishing cat had all its hair shot up, curving its body as it stepped on Faye's head to demonstrate to the black dog. The duo-winged golden-haired Danglong looked around, and finally decided to side with fishing cat, revealing 2 bright snow-white tiger teeth and showing deep hostility in its little eyes. But the white feather owl beast and wind-wing parrot shamelessly betrayed their little friends as they circled around the black dog, and after feeling that there was no danger, they landed on the black dog's shoulder, helping it comb its fur to butter up to it. What a group of animals, they all became geniuses. Wow! Look at those 2 beautiful kittens. Look, this little kitten also has wings. Angela and the blonde lowly Jima also noticed Faye's arrival. The two girls' eyes brightened up as they warmly and cheerfully ran towards Faye. Faye saw this scene and felt rejoiced. Since when did these two chicks become so open and passionate? He smiled with open arms to ask for a sweet hug, but who knew that these two girls stormed over, only to grab the fat fishing cat and duo-winged golden-hair Denglong, completely ignoring Faye. Faye's mouth twitched. His wide arms were only met with the wind, and became stiff in the air. Only the duo-winged Denglong was desperately struggling in lowly Jima's arms, turning its eyes in dissatisfaction as if saying, "Ah, stupid, who said I'm a cat? I'm the great magic beast Golden Denglong." Golden Denglong, idiot girl, do you understand? 1 minute later, a golden battle ring vaguely appearing under Faye's foot. His hand was completely enveloped in a massive of golden flame, and he gently pressed his future father-in-law's arm. With a shine of flame, instantly the two bluely marks on Best's forearm left by the big black dog disappeared, not even leaving behind any scars. Damn that bastard, I swear. From now on I will only eat dog meat. The old handsome man still didn't recover from this anger as he looked at the big black dog like looking at the murderer of his father and fiercely cursed. It was a shame to just think about it. The dignified, majestic official's first wound turned out to be his daughter's dog's bite. If this embarrassing story got out, how could he still maintain his majestic appearance in front of his colleagues? Best's old white face was now dark green due to the anger. Reputation was a problem, and it could be fatal too. And at this moment Faye also finally figured out what happened. It turned out that Best finished taking care of the recent administrative documents within the city, and also went through the hard work of settling down all the messengers and princes from the guest countries. He came to the palace wanting to talk to Faye about how to welcome Lake City's Prince Modric, but who knew that Faye wasn't in palace. However, he got to see his daughter Angela instead. The old man rarely had relaxation time, so he thought that it was a great opportunity to chat with daughter and give his innocent daughter some tips to tightly grasp King Alexander's heart. But who knew that the always sleeping big dog in the back garden suddenly woke up and sleepily stumbled upon Best and took a bite. "Ha ha, Uncle Best, why are you angry with a beast?" Faye laughed with his body bending back and forward, not bothering to hide his rejoice in the calamity of others, thinking that the old father-in-law should quickly pray to the god of war that he wouldn't get rabies. Otherwise, out of embarrassment, the old handsome man raged again and was about to unleash it until, at that moment, they heard a guard hurriedly coming in to report. "My king, Zenith Empire's Princess Highness, sent someone to meet us at the main hall." Huh? That mysterious princess finally couldn't wait anymore and actually came to invite me first? Faye felt rejoice in his heart. At the same time, the future father-in-law Best on his side also stood up. At that instant, Best seemed to have completely transformed. All of his anger disappeared without a trace. Although he was still barefoot and his feet were covered in dirt, and his hair was messy too, his entire temperament changed. An elegant and royal demeanor showed off his face, giving a completely bizarre feeling to those that were at the scene. He frowned in contemplation, and then said to Faye, "Alexander, you should go see this princess. There are less than 3 days until your ascension ceremony to the throne, so you must not offend that woman, otherwise things will get troublesome." Faye nodded. He lifted his foot and was about to walk to the main hall, but the big black dog actually blocked off Faye's path as if trying to please him, kneeling on its forelimbs, wagging its tail. By the look and demeanor of it, it seemed to actually want Faye to ride on its back. The people around them were stunned. This big black dog, whether in size or strength, was indeed beyond an average horse, so using it as a mount was also a suitable choice. But the problem was, Faye was the dignified king of the country, so what would riding on a big black dog make him? A black dog knight? But Faye didn't hesitate. He laughed and jumped on top of the back of the big black dog. The dog was extremely supernatural and it was very understanding of Faye's mind, and it swaggeringly walked towards the king's main hall, full of a king's force. Originally, Faye rode on its back just for fun, but who knew that gradually, Faye's face became serious. It was a strange feeling, as if he was completely spiritually connected to the dog, and any one of his intentions were understood by the big black dog instantly, whether it was to run, jump, or suddenly stop. The one person and one dog seemed to have combined into one, without the slightest difficulty in cooperation. This was much easier than horse riding. It looks like this big dog was really a perfect mount choice. So now, King Fei's future mount was a vicious mutt. The former military judge Kanka's estate covered more than 10 hectares, and it was a self-contained stone castle. Inside the manor, there were streams, forests, birds, and flowers, and the most amazing thing was the towering incense tree that stood in the most central spot of the garden. Every autumn season, it would grow little fine beige flowers, just like a giant yellow umbrella opened in between heaven and earth, with a rich aroma, covering Chambord City in the sweet scent. Could be said that the origin of the name Chambord City could have come in part from this incense tree. Fei jumped off the big black dog and patted on the head to tell it to obediently go to the side and play. He then followed the female warrior Susan through the tree-lined trail in front of the manor, passing through layers of guard posts. After being searched by the Princess Highness's bodyguards a total of 6 times, he finally arrived at the small and quiet, centralmost yard in the manor, and saw Princess Tanasha, who was sitting on a rocking chair napping below the giant incense tree. This was Fei's first time seeing this mysterious princess. This woman in front of Fei's eyes was skinnier than Fei imagined, and wasn't all that beautiful, at least being far off from Angela and Elena, who would give people a stunning feeling when seeing them for the first time. She could only be considered normal-looking. Her lips were full, which wasn't too suitable with her thin body and pale white face. The red color gave people an indescribable feeling of temptation, and her hair is soft and beautiful, shining under the sun. Hearing Fei come in, Princess Tanasha didn't open her eyes. This woman just sat quietly on the delicate rocking chair made out of bamboo and green vine. Her thin fingers gently tapped to an unknown beat, and after glancing at Fei, her whole body seemed to be immersed in the leisurely atmosphere. She was like a drawing, with her slightly closed eyes and tightly shut mouth. After the female warrior Susan took Fei in, she also left without saying anything. Now, only Fei and the princess were left in the courtyard. The atmosphere was very silent. However, Fei didn't have the slightest feeling of awkwardness. He swaggeringly walked over, sat down on a stone chair not too far away from Princess Tanasha, and checked out the giant tree in front of him. There was a casual expression on his face, unlike any normal expression a prince should have when sitting with a monarch country's Princess Highness. But on the inside, Fei was secretly surprised. This was because the melee combat expert's keen sense from Fei's barbarian mode told him that in this seemingly quite small yard, there were at least 20 sources of powerful existences. In addition to all those strict guard points along the way, Fei had a very strange feeling. It seemed like this mysterious princess was currently defending against some kind of threat, and that was why she set up all these intangible steel walls around her. Under such careful protection, not to mention humans, even a little fly wouldn't think about getting close to this skinny and fragile-looking princess without permission. Fei had a feeling. The entire Zenith Imperial's crowning emissary group and this pale and fragile-looking Princess Highness were all in the state of extreme vigilance. They seemed to be nervously preparing for a coming danger. But how was that possible? The crowning emissary group came to Chambord, a Tier 6 little subsidiary country, to crown a little king who just turned into an adult, so it was more like a tour and certainly not something adventurous. The bosses from Zenith Capital could just come relax, do some sightseeing, and then finish the ascension ceremony. But the situation Fei saw was clearly not the case. Such a heavily guarded place made King Alexander raise doubt that perhaps soon, Chambord City would face a brutal war. Exactly what happened? What was going to happen? Time quietly passed. The princess had been lying on the bamboo chair, swinging slowly back and forth. She didn't open her sapphire-like eyes, nor did she speak. She just kept on tapping on the chair's arm in a rhythm that was sometimes fast and sometimes slow, as if Fei, who was sitting on the side, was just an optical illusion and not a real existence. Fei also didn't want to talk first. It was as if the two were playing a kid's game called Whoever Speaks First Loses. After another dozen minutes, Fei felt bored, so he closed his eyes to relax. Who knew that after a while, from the quiet yard came a faint snoring sound, and this snoring sound was like a shit stick stirring a pot of soup, ruthlessly crushing the quiet and picturesque courtyard. The princess on the bamboo chair finally opened her eyes. She took a look at Faye crookedly lying on the stone bench, and a look of surprise flashed in her eyes. Her slender fingers that were tapping on the bamboo chair finally came to a stop. She straightened up, carefully observed for a while, and after confirming that this young king in front of her was really asleep, a glimmer of mixed facial expressions emerged on her face. She was stunned for a second, and then stopped minding Faye's snores, which were gradually getting louder. Princess Highness seemed to be used to it now. She lied back down onto the bamboo chair. But this time she didn't close her eyes. Her sky-blue sapphire-like eyes started coldly at the blue sky, and no one could tell what she was thinking. The yellow fragrant petals slowly drifted down from the branches of the giant tree, scattering its aroma across the floor. The snoring sound beside her was ear-piercing, yet harmonious. The guards hiding in the shadows saw this scene, and all of them were jaw-droppingly shocked. This little king, ignorance really does make him fearless. He's actually being this rude in front of our first Princess Highness. At Zenit capital St. Petersburg, not even Emperor Yashin of the Zenit Empire would dare to do this, right? It's just that they didn't know that at the moment, Faye had already traveled to another world. Rogue encampment, the boiling hot flames sparked up and down in the furnace. The big-chest beauty blacksmith Charcy's magical iron hammer drew beautiful residual shadows in the air one after another. Ding-ding-dong-dong, sounds landed on a burning red big sword that was on the forging anvil at a strange rhythm, and droplets of sweat dropped onto it, turning into vapor. On the other side of the iron furnace, Barbarian Faye was pulling on the lever of the bellows, forcefully feeding into it to make sure the demon tongue-like flame could fully lick the metal in the fire every time. Ding! When Charcy's last hammer fell on the sword, it was like drawing the period on the beautiful storm-like symphony. In the next instant, a hint of magic started distributing out of the sword, and then the orchid-colored flame started blinking. The sword started issuing waves of noise, and it actually started vibrating. God bless, it's finally done. The big-chested beauty Charcy got really excited and didn't even bother wiping the cluster of sweat on her forehead as she picked up the still blazing hot blade and waved it forcefully. A blue flame flashed out, and the blue air force actually opened a big gap on the hole blacksmith would shed. It really worked? Faye saw the scene and was also pleasantly surprised. He took over the blue broadsword, felt the temperature coming from the hilt, looked at it, and then he saw the stats of the sword in his eyes. One-handed damage, 4 to 9 double-handed damage, 8 to 14 plus 3 ice damage, durability 16-16, no level requirement, no strength point requirement. Although the damage isn't as high as purple-green dual blades, the quality definitely isn't low, and it actually doesn't have any requirements on strength points and level, so this is a completely sharp weapon for low-level characters. Faye felt ecstatic. Half an hour ago, Faye really couldn't be more patient. He really felt bored sitting beside the first princess, so he might as well take advantage of this opportunity to choose the option to enter the Diablo world in his dream. He went to Rogue encampment, found Blacksmith Charcy in barbarian mode, and asked her about the progress on using gems to forge magic weapons. He coincidentally came when Charcy was conducting the last experiment, and decided to lend a hand, and finally got to witness the whole process of successfully using chip gems to forge the first magic sword. Although this blue magic sword served no useful purpose for Faye, its meaning was extraordinary. First, the birth of this ice-style magic sword meant that Blacksmith Charcy's forging skills finally leveled up, capable of using gems to forge higher-level magic weapons. As long as she continued working hard and practicing, she would definitely be able to forge an even sharper magic weapon. Under Faye's almost limitless supply of gems, maybe one day, Charcy would be able to forge a super weapon beyond yellow or golden equipment. That way, Faye wouldn't need to clear bosses daily to collect all the equipment. Second, for Faye, all the equipment and weapons in the past were acquired from killing monsters or purchased from NPCs. These weapons were all finished goods, so Faye only had the right to choose, but now it was different. Whatever style of weapon or magic property, Faye could directly let Charcy forge it. The range of selection was much bigger, and the degree of focus was also stronger, and it was even possible to invent new weapons. Haha! This is awesome! I swear, I can see the birth of a great forging master on the rogue continent. Faye buttered up to Charcy, and then took out 20 pieces or so of all kinds of gems and a dozen already prepared sheepskin manuscript scrolls and handed them to Charcy, and then smiled. This time I will need you to forge me some armor. You just have to follow these drawings. These are armor blueprints? Charcy opened up the goatskin scrolls, carefully looked over them once, and frowned as she said, "These are beautiful armors, but armor is harder to forge than weapons. Master Faye, with my current forging skill level, I'm afraid that I won't have a 100% success rate. To complete the forging of these armors, I might need to waste a bit more elemental gems." "That's no problem. You can use however many you want," Faye said with full confidence. With the Heradric Cube, Faye just needed 3 chip gems to make 1 flawed gem, and then exchange the 1 flawed gem to exchange for 100 chip gems in the real world. Faye felt like he was sitting on a gold mountain, and he never had to worry about money in the future anymore. "Yes. All right, Charcy, in fact, you can go to the real world to try to build these weapons. Chambord City has a few quite skilled blacksmiths, and maybe they can help you," Faye suggested. Charcy wiped off the sweat on her forehead, then thought about what she saw in the stone maze like those big and perfect furnace facilities. Her eyes brightened and was pleasantly surprised after hearing it. "That's right. How did I not think of it? Master Faye, I will go find them right now." This female blacksmith had a short temper. After sending away the big-chested beauty Charcy, Faye stored the ice sword into his inventory, and then found Aunt Akira, and started following her to study how to identify herbs, configure agents, and produce magic scrolls. Of course, the things he learned in the beginning were all very basic knowledge. Faye was originally quite impatient for these things, and Aunt Akira was extremely sneaky, forcing him to sign the apprenticeship contract. So now he had to force himself to learn these things. However, as he gained more knowledge, Faye surprisingly found himself actually starting to getting interested in the knowledge. It was just that his memory was still as blurry as his past life, and often he remembered things wrong. He spent very little time studying with Akira, around half an hour. After that, Faye logged out of his barbarian mode, and then came to the 3D holographic projection screen and selected Druid mode, entering another parallel universe of the Diablo world, and began to challenge the first little map. In this space, the mercenary Faye had the female flame archer Kale. Ultimately, there were some differences with barbarian mode, and that was that the mercenary was a lot less agile and vivid than Elena, appearing a bit stiff and having rusty cooperation while fighting. Actually, aside from the flame archer Kale, in his druid mode, even the other NPCs in Rogue Encampment looked more like a computer program, far different from that dimension under his barbarian mode where the NPCs had emotions. This situation was very similar to Faye's experience in the second map, Lutgolian, making Faye very confused again, not knowing what caused this weird situation. Under all the modes, only the NPCs in Rogue Encampment under Barbarian mode were real flesh and blood people. With his doubts, during the next 3 hours, Faye actually cleared Druid mode's final challenge in one go, eliminating Rogue Continent's final boss Andalier in the temple's basement. He also got a few nice golden gears. At this time, his Druid had leveled up to 16. After getting fully geared, Faye's real combat strength in the real world was approximately at an intermediate 3-star level warrior. Of course, if his druid character had all kinds of magical summoning and transforming skills, maybe it could bring a challenge even when facing beginner 4-star elites.